In the shadows of justice lies the untold truth. Welcome to World True Crime, where we unravel the darkest mysteries and dive deep into the stories that shook the world. Join us as we uncover the chilling details and seek answers to the unthinkable. On the morning of August 18, 2003, what seemed like a normal family gathering quickly turned into something no one could have imagined. A surprising reaction from Shirley Turner would soon lead to a series of events that would change everything. What happened that day is a story filled with obsession, manipulation, and a heartbreaking loss. But the full truth wouldn't be uncovered until much later, leaving everyone who knew the victims wondering how this could happen. Stick with us as we dive into this shocking story where things aren't as simple as they first appear. Andrew David Bagby was born on September 25, 1973, in the United States, the only child of a loving couple, Kathleen Daphne Bagby, originally from England, and David Franklin Bagby, a U.S. citizen. Kathleen, a trained nurse and midwife in her home country, and David, a retired U.S. Navy serviceman turned computer engineer, had long hoped to have a child. After years of trying, they turned to fertility treatments, which eventually brought them the joy of a positive pregnancy test. The couple eagerly prepared for the arrival of their son, and Andrew's birth brought immense happiness to the family. Shortly after, the Bagby family moved to California, where Andrew was surrounded by the love of an extended family that lived nearby. From a young age, he was known for his charismatic and delightful personality, which helped him make many friends throughout his school years. Those who knew Andrew described him as intelligent, loyal, genuine, kind, and humorous. Although he briefly caused concern during his teenage years when his behavior became somewhat rebellious, his parents, who believed in open dialogue and problem-solving, addressed the situation with love and understanding. This approach helped Andrew return to his usual positive attitude. Andrew had a strong passion for sports and nature, and he joined the Boy Scouts, where his performance was exceptional, earning the highest rank by the age of 15. He also enjoyed acting as a hobby, taking on various roles in films made by his childhood friend Kurt, who had a passion for film production. After graduating high school, Andrew set his sights on studying medicine, inspired by his mother's stories of her time as a nurse and midwife in England. However, gaining admission to medical school proved difficult, as he was rejected by several institutions across the United States. But Andrew's persistence paid off when, in 1995, he was accepted into Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada. By this time, Andrew had been in a relationship with Heather, a girl he had known since high school. Their bond was so strong that they became engaged before starting university together. Heather followed Andrew to Canada, where they both pursued their medical studies. However, after their first year, they decided to end their relationship for reasons that remained private. Despite their breakup, they remained friends. The experience marked a turning point for Andrew, who found himself feeling vulnerable and isolated in a foreign country, away from his family and friends. Luckily, Andrew's charm and outgoing personality made it easy for him to form new connections. In early 1999, while in his third year of medical school, Andrew met Shirley Turner, a woman 12 years older than him. Shirley Jane Turner was born on January 28, 1961, in the United States, the youngest of 4 siblings. Her father, a U.S. military man, separated from her mother when Shirley was just 7 years old. After the divorce, Shirley moved with her mother to Newfoundland, where she spent most of her childhood. In 1980, she enrolled in a chemistry course at the Memorial Hospital in the region, hoping to eventually pursue a medical career. At that time, Shirley was in a relationship which ended with marriage. During the winter break of 1981, Shirley's first child, a son, was born on July 9, 1982. Despite becoming a mother, she was determined not to give up her studies. Her husband agreed to stay at home and care for their child, but soon Shirley had to pause her studies. By 1983, she moved to the city of Labrador, where she worked as a science teacher. 2 years later, on March 8, 1985, she gave birth to a daughter. Afterward, Shirley began an affair with a fisherman, a former lover, and her marriage began to deteriorate. On January 29, 1988, Shirley divorced her husband. Shortly after, she remarried her former lover and had another daughter in 1990. However, this second marriage was short-lived, and in 1991, the man left her and their children. In 1993, Shirley sought custody of her children, which was granted to her. However, she quickly became overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for them all. She decided to send her youngest child to live with her father, who also helped look after the other two while Shirley continued with her studies. However, in October of that year, a man close to Shirley confided in her therapist, revealing that he had witnessed Shirley physically and emotionally abusing two of her children. The therapist immediately reported the allegations to social services, and within days, caseworkers interviewed the children who confirmed the abuse, stating that their mother had punished them with belt lashes and hits. Shirley's second ex-husband, however, claimed that she only used the belt as a threat and did not actually harm the children. Following the social services incident, Shirley's ex-husband told her that he would only take responsibility for their youngest child, but he would no longer support the older two. As a result, Shirley sent the older children to live with their father and paternal grandmother while continuing her studies. Shirley became romantically involved with a younger resident from the same hospital where she worked. The young man initially described her as kind, understanding, and generous, but the relationship soon became turbulent. He wanted to avoid drama and decided to end it, but Shirley did not take the breakup well. She repeatedly contacted him, leaving messages in which she threatened harm and even physically attacked him. The resident did everything he could to avoid her, but in one instance, Shirley followed him to his apartment. Standing at his door, she created a disturbing scene, wearing a black dress and holding a bouquet of red roses. She attached 2 notes to her clothes, indicating that she would take her own life. To end the dramatic act, Shirley ingested a large quantity of over-the-counter medication in what appeared to be an attempt to overdose, though she knew she would receive help in time. The resident called emergency services, and Shirley was promptly taken to the hospital for treatment. Her actions pointed to the troubling and even dangerous nature of her behavior. Despite these obvious signs, Andrew, who was in his 3rd year of medical school at the time, met Shirley in 1999. At first, their connection was casual, with neither of them seeking a serious relationship. However, their age difference and Shirley's questionable behavior raised concerns among Andrew's friends, who disapproved of the relationship. They thought Shirley's manipulative and sometimes inappropriate remarks put Andrew at a disadvantage, considering his history of being a kind, healthy young man surrounded by positive influences. Despite these warnings, Andrew continued to see Shirley. In May 2000, she graduated from medical school. A few months later, she confided in a relative that since 1982, she had been withdrawing money from a scholarship fund, claiming it was for her children's future university expenses. In reality, she had spent the money on her own living expenses and her doctoral education. She justified her actions by stating that she would make plenty of money as a doctor after completing her residency, at which point she would repay the fund she had taken. In the same year, Andrew secured a surgical residency in New York and moved to the city, while Shirley relocated to Iowa. They tried to maintain a long-distance relationship, but it was not successful. According to Shirley, she visited him 7 times, while he only visited her. Once after starting his residency, Andrew realized that surgery did not meet his expectations. So, in the fall of 2001, he moved to Pennsylvania for a family practice residency, where he felt more at home. For reasons unknown, in October 2001, Shirley obtained permission to purchase a firearm and began taking lessons to learn how to use it. Shirley Turner's possessive behavior towards Andrew escalated to alarming levels, leaving him shocked, as she had never shown this side of her personality before. She began incessantly calling him, demanding to know where he was and who he was with at all times. She even contacted his parents, whom she had previously introduced to him as just a friend. In a desperate attempt to regain his attention, Shirley told Andrew that she was pregnant. Though he agreed to discuss the matter later, she paid him a visit at the end of the month. The meeting, however, quickly turned sour as they argued, particularly because Andrew appeared to be involved with another woman. On November 3, 2001, in a moment of brutal honesty, Shirley confessed that she had lied about her pregnancy in an effort to keep him with her. This manipulation was the breaking point for Andrew, who angrily ended the relationship and sent Shirley back to Iowa. Less than 24 hours after their breakup, Shirley, completely out of control, began obsessively calling him. Andrew refused to answer, but Shirley was determined to make him pay for rejecting her. She embarked on a 16-hour drive from Iowa to Andrew's home. On the morning of November 5, 2001, a confrontation occurred at Andrew's house, after which he left for work. Visibly upset, he spoke to his friend and colleague Clark Simpson, explaining that Shirley was deeply upset over the breakup. Although Andrew did not plan to get back together with her, he had agreed to see her once he finished his workday. Clark, sensing that the meeting was a bad idea, advised Andrew against meeting with her privately, warning that Shirley could become violent. Despite this, Andrew reassured Clark that he would visit him after his meeting with Shirley. Clark waited, but Andrew never showed up. Later that day, Shirley returned to her home and left a message on Andrew's answering machine, which he again ignored. The following morning, when Andrew did not show up for work, Clark immediately suspected that something had happened to his friend. Soon after, news broke that Andrew's lifeless body had been found at a state park in Pennsylvania, where he had been shot. Investigators began by speaking with Andrew's close friends, and Clark was one of the first to provide detailed accounts of the events leading up to Andrew's death, including Shirley's disturbing behavior. Armed with this information, the police contacted Shirley, who claimed to be shocked and saddened by the news. She told them she had been sick and in bed on November 5. The authorities continued investigating and discovered Shirley's name on a list of firearm owners. They contacted her again, asking her to bring in her weapon for ballistic testing. Shirley initially agreed, but when it came time to hand over the gun, she made excuses, saying she couldn't find it. At this point, preliminary autopsy and ballistic reports confirmed that Andrew had died from 5 gunshot wounds from the same type of bullets used in Shirley's gun. But without direct evidence linking the weapon to the crime, it was only circumstantial. Despite this, the police insisted she turn in the gun. Meanwhile, the detectives began analyzing mobile phone records, but the technology of the time was not as advanced, and results took several days. This delay worked in Shirley's favor, as she managed to flee to Canada on November 12, 2001, since no arrest warrant or travel restrictions were in place against her. As Shirley returned to Canada, Andrew's family and friends were left in shock, struggling to believe that someone could harm such a kind and remarkable person. In the wake of his death, Andrew's childhood friend, Kurt, who had worked with him on several videos during their teenage years, decided to honor him by making a documentary. He set out to interview everyone who had known Andrew to celebrate the life of his beloved friend. A few weeks after the tragedy, mobile phone records revealed that Shirley had traveled to Pennsylvania and returned to Iowa right around the time Andrew was attacked, adding further weight to the investigation. Given the overwhelming evidence, the authorities took immediate steps to issue an international arrest warrant for Shirley Turner. From that moment on, Canadian authorities began closely monitoring her movements, and on December 12, 2001, Shirley was arrested. The same day, extradition proceedings were initiated. However, the Canadian judge overseeing the case believed that Shirley did not pose a threat to society, despite the serious charges awaiting her in Pennsylvania. He set her bail at $75,000 and imposed additional conditions, including the surrender of her passports, a promise not to leave the area, weekly police check-ins, and a prohibition from contacting Andrew's family. With the help of her psychiatrist, whom she had been seeing after Andrew's death, Shirley managed to pay the bail and was released. But this case took a dramatic turn when Shirley confessed that she was 2 months pregnant and that the child she was carrying was Andrew's. This revelation hit Andrew's family and friends hard, as the woman who had caused so much pain to Andrew was now carrying his child. Kurt, Andrew's childhood friend and the producer of the documentary in Andrew's memory, decided to shift the focus of his project. He decided to make it a letter from Andrew to his unborn child, so that the baby could know his father despite his absence. When it was revealed that the baby was a boy and that Shirley planned to name him Zachary Andrew Turner, Kurt titled the documentary Dear Zachary, a letter to his son from his father. For Andrew's parents, this situation was complex and filled with conflicting emotions. However, the pregnancy represented a part of their son through his grandchild, and they chose to prioritize their hearts over their reasoning. They moved to the city where Shirley lived, determined to be close to their future grandson. In July 2002, their grandson was born, and they began a lengthy custody battle, believing that Zachary was at risk in his mother's care. During the lengthy legal process, David and Kathleen worked hard to maintain a cooperative relationship with Shirley hoping to avoid any actions on her part that might harm the baby or their relationship with their grandson. By November 2002, Shirley was taken into custody, awaiting a decision from the Federal Justice Department regarding her extradition to the United States. This brought good news for David and Kathleen, as they would likely gain custody of Zachary. However, the situation was far from simple, as Shirley set conditions for her son's custody. She demanded weekly visits with the baby, daily phone calls, and even requested a photo of herself and Andrew together for the child. In January 2003, in a controversial decision, the judge released Shirley again, arguing that she was presumed innocent of Andrew's murder and that there was no evidence of psychological traits that would pose a risk to Zachary. After 6 months, the baby was returned to her custody. From that point on, Shirley made every effort to keep Zachary away from his grandparents, often creating excuses. But David and Kathleen refused to give up. On July 4, 2003, Shirley met a young man at a bar, and they had sex on 2 occasions. However, the relationship ended when the man learned about Shirley's involvement in Andrew's death. As expected, she became obsessed and made over 200 threatening phone calls to him in the following month. She even claimed that she was pregnant with his child. The man contacted the authorities 3 times to report Shirley's harassment, which violated the terms of her bail and could result in her losing custody of Zachary. Unfortunately, the man refused to identify himself and did not file a formal police report, so no investigation was launched. When an agent contacted Shirley's lawyer about the allegations, she, of course, denied everything. When Zachary turned 1, Shirley organized a birthday party at a well-known fast food establishment. David and Kathleen attended, and the child was happy to be with them. During the celebration, Shirley picked up the baby, who immediately began to cry, visibly uncomfortable. After this, she approached Kathleen and told her that it was clear Zachary loved her more and that it would be best for her to take him. After this unexpected reaction, she walked away from the gathering crying and soon became angry. On August 18, 2003, Shirley requested that Zachary be returned to her as she had legal custody. David and Kathleen had no choice but to comply. The following day, they found neither Shirley nor the baby, and panic set in immediately. The next few days were filled with great distress until another tragedy struck. Shirley's body was found on a beach by a couple on vacation, with Zachary's body discovered nearby. The authorities quickly pieced together the events of that fateful August 18th. Shirley had bought medication from a pharmacy and then drove with Zachary to the home of the man she had met at the bar. She left photos of herself and the baby, as well as a used tampon in the car. She then drove to an area near the Atlantic Ocean. There, she mixed antidepressants with Zachary's baby formula and fed it to him. Afterward, she ingested a toxic dose herself. She tied the baby to her chest with her sweater and jumped from the fishing dock, ending both of their lives. The police concluded that Shirley's actions were driven by revenge, and she had tried to incriminate the man she had briefly dated. Forensic experts determined that Zachary did not suffer, as he had been unconscious due to the medication. In the aftermath of the horrific events, David and Kathleen held a press conference in which they firmly stated their belief in Shirley's responsibility for their son's death. They expressed their outrage at the judicial system for being overly lenient with her, allowing her to remain free after committing the first crime, and then giving her the freedom to take the life of the most innocent of children. In an interview with a child and youth protection officer, Shirley's supervising doctor during her residency described her as a manipulative sociopath. This revelation led the hospital to make significant changes in its residency evaluation process. On May 3, 2006, a disciplinary board convened by the Newfoundland and Labrador College of Physicians and Surgeons found Shirley's psychiatrist guilty of professional misconduct for helping her pay her bail. He was ordered to pay a fine of $110,000 to cover a third of the $330,000 spent by the institution on the investigation. The psychiatrist expressed his disappointment with the ruling, while David said he was satisfied with the precedent it set. In October of the same year, a forensic judge released the findings of his investigation into Shirley's case. He concluded that Zachary's death was preventable and criticized the region's social services for failing to protect the child from his mother. He pointed out that there had been poor communication between social service officials who, throughout the case, worked under the presumption of Shirley's innocence, prioritizing her well-being over the child's. In October 2009, a member of the local parliament in Canada introduced a bill called Zachary's Law, aiming to change the country's criminal code to allow courts to deny bail to those accused of serious crimes when it concerns the protection of children. The bill received unanimous support from the House of Commons and backing from a senator. On December 16, 2010, it was passed into law by the Governor General. Additionally, 2 scholarships were created in honor of Andrew and his son. Now that you know the details, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the justice system's handling of Shirley's case. Do you agree or disagree with how she was treated? Thank you for joining us on this journey through the unsettling truths of world true crime. If you found this case compelling, stay with us for more stories that demand to be heard. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.